Okay, let's start. So, yesterday we were talking about some basics of programming. Before starting, I would like to show you some source code, some sources, some resources that you can basically use to uh, ask these questions apart from ChatGPT and to check these questions and these whole things on your own if you ever want to learn on your own any of these points, because it's really important that you are always like going to the right source and try to learn from the right reference basically. So one of the very good sources of learning, or in my opinion, but basically the best resource for learning anything about programs and infrastructures of Microsoft, specifically when it comes to Visual Studio and when it comes to programming, is the resources that the Visual Studio team and the .NET team are providing. So one of them is the Learning Center of the .NET. It's a website like this. In this web page, which is called .NET.microsoft.com, if you write this there, so I'm just like copying that to the chat as well for the without the backslash for the reference. So if you go there, you see a lot of different basically like references about like how to work with .NET, with everything. Like there's, for example, programming with C#. If you go there, there is like there are different specific resources for working. So from, I don't know, resources for beginners, for more professional stuff and everything. And okay, what is it? Okay, yo, sure, thanks. Yeah, I thought, yeah. I thought someone wants to join in. I saw the notification, and I was wondering if someone wants to join in. Okay, so this is one example of like how you can use like these references. Another example would be like this page that there is a .NET page, .NET resources page on YouTube, and it has like several different kind of resources there. One of them is this C# for beginners. This is something that I check these tutorials to make sure like the stuff that it says is not too much, it's not and it's proper for you, and it's a actually really nice resource. And I suggest that you go through this on your own time whenever you can, and it's really helpful. So it gives you a lot of information how to do coding. It's not based on Rhino, but they're using a Visual Studio Code environment, which is a free environment that you can use. And in that environment, they're testing the code and everything. So I also copy paste the link to this page here as well. So if you want to check it later. What else? Another interesting thing is like the tutorials. If I don't know, I guess probably you're familiar with W3 or another words, Triple W School. They have tutorials for different programming languages, everything, and one of them is basically the C# tutorial, which is here, and then in this C# tutorial you can see, I don't know, a lot of information like how what are the basics of C#, how you can start with C#, C# syntax, outputs, inputs, variables, everything, data types, things that we talked about yesterday, types of ifs, switches, whatever, or I don't know what are methods, classes, object-oriented programming. It has a very proper, good classification here. So this is also another good example of where you can basically get information about C# and about programming in general. I also paste this one here. Okay, so these are three interesting resources that I think would be helpful for you. And after this, okay, another thing I would also I wrote down to not forget to tell you. There are sometimes you want to write a piece of code just to make sure that it works or not. One of the ways to do that is, of course, if you have Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code or Rhino, Grasshopper, or any platform with a C# programming language, you can, of course, open that platform, open that IDE or software, whatever, and then start writing your code and test to make sure what happens. Sometimes you don't have access to that, you're on the way or whatever. There are a lot of like online programming consoles available that you can use to write code. So one of them is, for example, like the console that you can see on the Microsoft page. So if you go here on the learn.microsoft.com, this is where you basically start learning C#, basically mentored by the programmers of the .NET. You can enter a focus mode for your console, and then you can start writing code. So this is basically a .NET editor with a C# programming language, and you can start writing code. For example, you can say, I don't know, int a equals 10. It's exactly as it is in C#. You don't need to start a class or something. You can just immediately start writing code. So int b equals 20. And then, for example, like then you can start saying, okay, console. And as you see, it also has a pop-down menu that helps you write code more properly. It's even much better than Rhino, although it's online. So you write console, you write console and tab point, then you can find the write line operation. If you enter, then you open parentheses, and then you write, for example, a plus b, and then you use exclamation marks, and then now you can run. And in the output window, in the terminal window here, you see the results. So this is basically where you can write a lot of different codes. But remember, for example, here, you cannot start using Rhino namespaces. Actually, I never tried, but it shouldn't basically work because it is using the general namespaces of the Visual Studio. So if we say using, which is a keyword that I will talk about later, and we say Rhino, yeah, it doesn't find Rhino because it doesn't have reference to any dynamically linked library or anywhere that understands Rhino. So this is something you cannot do. So you cannot start testing your Rhino Grasshopper code here, but you can test your general code in this code space. So that's also this. Did I send the page? Yes. Okay. Just give me a second. Sorry. So that's it. Okay. Yesterday we began with the basic concepts of programming in C#. We discussed what is programming, what is scripting. Any of these, if I explain and you have a vague or you have vague understanding, or you have a question, let me know. I quickly explain again. So then we went through variables and different types. We have seen some types. We've seen that okay, we can define specific types of variables in C#, and there are ways to like define them. So for example, like we had integer variables that are integer values, whole numbers without any decimal values, or double variables, or character, Boolean, string variables, different types. We started to use them. We talked about the scope of these variables. When I say scope, it means like how big the number of these variables can be, or how small they can be. So there is a range that these variables can be. It depends how much memory each of these variables are using. And based on that memory, you can have a specific value type inside that container, inside that memory container. We discussed Boolean types also, and I also mentioned that you should remember, if you are familiar with a different programming language that was turning Boolean values to 0 and 1. This is not the case in C#, and if you want to turn Booleans into 0 and 1s in C#, you need to do it manually, and it doesn't happen automatically. So Boolean values are used for conditions and comparisons and stuff like that. So when you want to check a condition, whether a condition comes true or not, that's where you can use Boolean variables. And then we also had like string values, which are basically, in a simple way, variables that are types that are containing a set of characters, which is another variable type next to each other, and defines a text entity for our programming. We talked about casting and type conversions, and we said like it's possible to change from one type to another type. Sometimes there are problems happening there, so sometimes it's possible that you cast from something to another, or you convert from something to another. So it's possible to convert from a text which contains number 9, 10, whatever, to an integer or to a double value. But it's not possible if you have a text which has like int, which has like 10a, 10 with a letter, 10 with some unrecognizable character that does not have any meaning in the world of numerics and numerables. Then you cannot translate that easily with normal convert types. There are ways, maybe you need to split the part which is not number, take the part which is number, and then translate it. These are techniques that sometimes you have to do, but generally we saw there is a possibility of changing and converting between one type to another. This, of course, includes a different memory allocation. So if you have a variable which was using back then like 4 bytes of memory, and now you're translating it to, you're changing it to a variable which needs like 10 bytes of memory, then of course you need to throw away those 4 bytes and occupy a different memory space somewhere else, which can offer you 10 bytes of memory space, and then put those values, those information, that data there. So I did not talk about scope of variables yet. We are going to talk about it, and I did not talk about nullable versus non-nullable values. This is also something that we will talk about today. And then after that, we went to, we discussed, let me see here. After variables, we also discussed a bit of like by value and by reference assignment of values to variables. This is something that I'm going to dive deeper into today as well, and we're going to explain it more. Then we also discussed the Grasshopper integration with the C#, what's going on there, and also what else? We discussed about operators. And this is an important topic. I'm gonna go back to these operators more often, because this is something that happens to basically confuse a lot of programmers, beginner programmers, and sometimes intermediate programmers. So this is something that you are going to need to be careful of till the end of your life when you're dealing with programming or anything, any sort of like logic. So it's important to know what are the types of operators. I would like to show you link here in Microsoft. So basically, again, we have this Microsoft Learn platform, which which has a lot of information about everything. And here, it's basically the best resource for you to learn things, to learn knowledge in regarding programming. Sometimes it might be a bit overwhelming, a bit like confusing. That's where you can also start searching other websites, or in today's case, you can also use ChatGPT to ask questions to see what is what and what does it mean. So maybe, for example, like you don't know what does the operator precedence means, and you read this here, you don't understand, and then you can basically go to ChatGPT, ask the question, and then it provides you with more information. Or of course, you can check online videos. So then here in C#, in the operator explanation, we will see that again, similar to what I was explaining here back then, yesterday, we have different types of operators here. We have arithmetic operators, comparison operators, Boolean logical and bitwise shift operators, equality operators. So let's go back to this page here. So this is something that I want to now explain a bit more, because this is something that we are going to need in near future, both for writing code and both for being able to read code. So we have different Boolean logical operators. First of all, what does Boolean logical operators do? These are operators that are used when we are dealing with Boolean values, with values that are either true or either false. So we have different operators. So we have like arithmetic operators. So you have plus, minus, whatever in that category, multiply, remainder, or something. They are dealing with numbers. They are dealing with arithmetic values. So whether it is integer number, or it's a float number, or it's a double or decimal number, they are dealing with numbers. So the input of those operations, whenever we are using arithmetic operators, are numbers. Okay. So, and when we are saying that we are talking about Boolean operators or Boolean logical operators, the input of those operations are basically Boolean values. So what are we talking about? We're talking about true and false. Why do we need these operators at all? There are some times that we need to find out if something is true or not. And there are some times that we have more than one condition. And we need to know if all of the conditions are true, or some of them are true, or one of them is at least true, or none of them are true, or something like that. So there are different situations that we are dealing with in programming. For that reason, basically in every programming language, we have operators which are called logical operators. And they're basically associated with names like and, or, not, and exclusive or XOR. Okay, so for example, finally, like if you are using a language like Visual Basic, you use exactly and, or, not, and exclusive or XOR when you're writing the code. But that's not the case in C# or C++ or languages like Python or Java programming language, or many other programming languages of that category. So what do we do here? Here, if we want to check these situations, we need to use specific signs and symbols to tell the interpreter of C# that we are doing a sort of, we are operating on two Boolean operators and we want to get that answer. Okay, so if you remember, first of all, we had something that was called this exclamation mark. This is called logical negation operator. So you remember that we checked it yesterday. It was like when we wanted to say something is not something. Okay, this is something we call a not operator. Okay, so again, we go back to, actually we can now start using this console that we have open here. Yeah, that's cool. That's easier than going to Grasshopper now. So what do we want to do? We are going to have a Boolean operator like BLNA, okay, equals to false. Then we are going to say console dot write line BLNA. Okay, so what happens here? If I'm going to print this, I would get basically false. Okay, so here we get the BLNA is false. If I say BLNA is not BLNA, I get true. Because what does this not do? This not basically shifts the nature of the false value. So it turns it from false to true. So you see, we have Boolean BLNA as false, and now we knotted this BLNA, and now it's basically true. So this same situation can be used like in conditions. And there is one question before using the conditions. Do you know, if I basically now write console.writeLine BLNA, the second line, in the first line we saw we would get true. What do we get in the second line? Do we get true or do we get false? What other people say? Everybody agrees on false? So the second line is first, but the question is that when we say not BLNA, exactly. So it's just negating it and throwing it to another variable, which is the input of the writeLine method. So here, writeLine is a method. I'm going to explain what our methods a bit later today. But so we're basically negating it. We are changing it and sending it to the writeLine. But we are not changing the value of BLNA itself. This is something that you have to be careful. This can get confusing because there are some variables which, when they are applied to a value, the value itself will change. Okay, so like incrementation values or some operators or something, and there are some operators which, when they are applied and when they're sitting next to a variable name, they change the value and send it away, but they don't change the nature of the variable itself. Okay, so this is something that you have to know. If you write such a code, whatever, the BLNA doesn't change its nature. Okay, so just to make this clear, that what I mean by this situation. So we also had another operator which was called incrementation, if you remember. So we have, like, if I define int a equals like 1, and then I close this, and I will write, let's call this a lowercase. So now we have, it's possible to increase the value of a. Okay, so let's first use this console.writeLine. In the first line, we print the value of a, and if I run the code, then I would see like I have true, false, and then 1. Okay, so this was these 2 lines, and then I have 1. Now I can add to the amounts of a in different ways. One way would be a plus 1. One way would be a equals a plus 1, and I close it. Okay, then if I run, I don't see anything because I didn't print. Then I print again in the 8th line. Then I would get 2. Okay, so what would be the another way? The easier way is like a plus equal 1, and we close the line. Okay, so this is also an incrementation and assign value operator. So now we added one more again. So after this, when we run line 10, we're going to have 3. Okay, and there is another way that we can do this, and we can say a plus plus, and we run this. And now this is 4. This is what I means by you need to know what happens, and when you use these like operators, how they act and what happen, and you need to know how they operate. Why is it so important? Because, for example, sometimes you can basically say instead of like a plus plus separately, you can say console.writeLine a plus plus. Okay, And then I basically remove all of these to stop the confusion. So we start with 1. So now the question is, didn't we say here, console.writeLine A++? Why did we get 1? Why don't we get 2? Because A was 1. But here we said console.writeLine A++. What happened here? So you mean this plus plus didn't act at all, didn't do anything at all, right? Okay, so one question. Now, if I write console.writeLine A, what does it show here? Again, it shows 1. So if your theory is correct, it would again show 1, right? But you see your theory is wrong. So, and this is where the understanding of the code and operators is really important, because it doesn't matter what ChatGPT or anyone gives you. If you don't understand these sort of things in the code, you cannot edit that code and you cannot basically debug that code, because there are so many times that you receive a code that you have to do some edits because that machine can do a mistake. So what happens here? Does anybody understand the situation? I give you a hint. It's about the operators, order of operators. It's about like which operator runs first and which operator goes second. What is the predecessor of something else? So what happens here is that when we write console.writeLine A, the interpreter arrives to A. So it first sends A as it is to the writeLine method and then adds to the A. Okay, so this is very important. So this plus plus comes after A. Then it adds, but after printing. Okay, then if I print it again, it already prints something that was added in the previous version of the operation. Okay, so the question is, now, if I put parentheses around A++, so if I add some excessive parentheses here, what happens now? If I click run, what happens? What would I get as an answer? So it means we would get 2 and 2, right? Yeah, but we did it. So this is something you should know about how operators operate. So again, this parenthesis opens, and this is how plus plus works. The point is, like with some operators, this is something that you can check in the online references, or sometimes you have to do tests. So that is actually why always having a separate console, a separate C# component, or a separate program for testing these sort of things is always important. And this is not just about like a beginner programmer. This happens to professional programmers also. Sometimes you suddenly forget, like, what was the order of these operators, and what if I write this, what happens exactly? So sometimes you're unsure of something. So instead of writing your big code and getting an error or trying to debug that, you just go to another piece of code somewhere like this console, and then start to write a small piece of code, an example that's something that represents the situation, and then you would see that, okay, this is how it behaves. So I cannot get rid of that situation with plus plus. But there is a possibility here in C++, in C#. I can say plus plus A. Here, what happens? If I run, I would get 2 and 2, because now the plus plus comes first. So we arrive to the plus plus, then plus plus operator says, okay, hey, give me something. I want to add it. Console writeLine sees plus plus, asks plus plus, give me something. Plus plus says, okay, I need someone to add 1 value to it, because I want to make someone equals someone plus 1. Okay, then what happens? Then It finds A, it adds to A, and it sends it to the right line. Okay, this could be also basically minus minus. So it will be 0 and 0. Okay, so is that clear? Mm-hmm. Of course. Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, yes. Plus plus. Okay. Mm-hmm. If I run this, no, it will give me 2 and 2. Yes, because if I write A plus plus, then it gives me 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. What is your guess? No, the first 2 is the same. So it's like 1, 2. And then what is the next? Exactly. So this one runs first, and then the whole parenthesis will be sent to the interpreter to the right line. The reason for that is plus plus is and minus minus and all of these like double operators like this are operators for specific like reasons. So for example, we're going to use them in for loops, we're going to use them in a lot of situations, and they have been like this, I don't know, forever, probably longer than all of our ages, since the beginning of like their advent, basically. So this is how they operate. The point is like we have to understand it, and this is what that is why I from the first moment yesterday I said like you need to be really careful about the order of operators, and you need to be really careful like how you should put the operators next to each other, and when parentheses act and when they don't act. Okay, so this is very important, and how to write things, how to prevent from redundant things, redundant coding, and how to prevent from mistakes. But did it give your answer, Kesra? You're fine with it now, or you're still confused? So what is the question now? Tell me. No, it's fine. This is the reason that we are doing this course is actually these sort of questions. So we want to answer that. Hmm. Hmm. No, 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 no. I'll tell you what happens. Let's see if I can draw on the screen nicely. Okay. So what happens here is that um, here in this line, what happens here is that we have A, okay? And then here we are having plus and plus, okay? So this plus plus runs basically after the A is sent to the right line. So the right line here, the right line here receives the value of A first, which is what? Which is 1, okay? Int A equals 1, okay? So it receives the value first, and then when it receives the value, then it says, okay, there is still a plus plus that I have to take care of, okay? So what do I do with this plus plus? This plus plus needs an input, and it finds the input either after or before it. So if I write something like A plus plus A, this should be a wrong. This is a wrong syntax. it gives me an error. It says like, you have a plus plus with 2 inputs. What are you doing? You can have an input either afterwards or beforehand, because this is not like a plus, which needs 2 inputs. A plus can get A and B, okay? But a plus plus gets only 1 input, or a plus equals gets 2 inputs. So if I say A plus equal 1, then it means that, okay, this is the first input, this is the output, and this is the input, and this is actually acts as input as well. So A plus equals 1 is similar to A plus 1. Okay, so basically what happens here is that we first, the right line operation, let me clean the screen. So what happens here is that the right line first receives A, and in line 6, the line 6 has 2 things to happen. First, it sends A to right line, and this right line basically prints this value here. Okay, then it adds to A in the background, and A, which was 1, becomes 2 in line 6. When we arrive to line 7, A is already 2. It doesn't go back to line 6. A is already 2. So it doesn't matter whatever happens. A is already 2. And then when we arrive in line 8, A is already 2. Still, nothing changed. It is 2, and 2 plus 2 would be basically 4 here. Exactly. Console.run doesn't change the A. What changes the A is the plus plus. Console.run only sends something. So to do this, let me clarify the code for you. So here, what happens is that clear. Okay. So here, if I basically say, if I take this away and I add a line here, A plus plus, I would get the same result. You see? Because here the A was printed, then 1 was added to A, then A was printed again, the A which was added. Okay, but that is exactly why I'm talking about this plus plus at the same time with this negation operator, with this not operator, because I want you to not get confused. When we are using a not operator or logical operators, it usually, instead, unless we are using assignment logical operators, it doesn't change the nature of the incoming variable. It changes it and sends it out, but it doesn't change the memory value. But when you use some of the operators like plus plus, it changes the nature of the memory as well, because that is what it means. So it's like the translation of plus plus is something which works differently than the translation of a operator like not, like exclamation mark. Is it clear? Okay, good. So I hope it was not confusing, and I hope you get it. But this is really important, because you're going to see a lot of these sort of things in the code all the time. And if you understand it, you are one step ahead already. So I close this thing. And OK, so we're going back to this page. We saw this not operator and how it works. Then we have another operator, which is called AND operator. I usually describe the two sorts of AND that we have at the same time together. This is not how usually it's taught in programming courses, but I think it's less confusing for non-computer science students. So we have a logical AND operator and we have a conditional logical AND operator. You may think that it doesn't matter at all for you at first when I explain this to you, but as soon as you start coding, you realize that it really matters, You will see why. So what are these? The AND operator versus the conditional logical AND operator. When we use one and comparing to when we use two ampersands. Okay, so they are both doing apparently the same thing. They are checking the condition of their two sides and they are returning a value if both sides are the same condition, are true. So let's check it here. So we don't need this code anymore. Let's write the code. So I would say bool bln b equals false. Okay. So now we have two Boolean values, and we want to basically do something if both of them are true, or let's say both of them are something. Okay. So what do we do? Just to remind you what was happening yesterday, we can use an if condition here. Okay. So we can have if parenthesis open. We need to have a condition there. So I can say just if bln a, then after that I open the curly braces and then write console dot write line bln a bln a is true. Okay. So if I run this, obviously we get no output because bln a is not true. And if I change the bln a to true and I run this, I would get bln a is true. Okay, so this is something we checked yesterday. And if this is false, again, I'm doing this to make you remember. So if I'm doing if not bln a, which is similar to if bln a is not true, or if bln a equals false, these are all the same meaning. So it doesn't matter if I write not bln a, or if I write bln a equals false, or if I write bln a true. Okay, so these are all having the same meaning. It's your decision, and according to the situation, why do you want to do this? Okay, so we say if not bln a, then write bln a is false. Okay, so I run it and it says it's false because it's false. Okay, so in the next step, what we want to do, we want to check if bln a and bln b are at the same time true. So now they're both false. So here is where we are using the logical operators. So if I say bln a and bln b, then we say here and bln b are true. Okay, so if I write it, I will get no output. If I want to get an output, I can say else and enter and say console.writeLine are false. So it's wrote. Do you see any anomaly already in this code? No one? Why didn't I use? Yeah, okay, go ahead. Why? No, it says BLN A and BLN B are false. So the question that I had was like, if you see something weird, is because basically this was something I wanted to open up now in the middle of the situation, that you can, when you have an if situation, that after if you only have one line of code, you can skip the using of curly braces. Okay, so yeah, no, it reads it. So the point is like this line of code, if BLN A and BLN B, console.write line, BLN A and BLN B are true, and else like that. So this code works. So right now, it always says false because they are both false. Okay, so BLNA and BLNB, they should be both true. If I say true here, so one of them are true, and I run it, I would again say BLNA and BLNE are false, which is actually not a correct answer, because I should say BLNA is BLNA and BLNB is basically BLNB. Okay, and for the code to be able to understand that, I need to add a dollar sign, not a number sign, a dollar sign here in the beginning. Okay, so if I run the code, I would say it says BLNA is true and BLNB is false. That's why we never went to the first condition, and we skipped it, and then we went to the second one, which is else. Okay, and if both are true, when I run the code, I see BLNA and BLNB are true. Okay, so just a side note so that you don't forget, when you have one line of code, so if I want to write 2 lines of code here and say, okay, I see what's your problem. Okay, let's first skip this and answer your question. So your question is, it doesn't state. It actually states. What states is the and. So I don't need to say if BLNA equals true and BLNB equals true, then do something. I can of course do that and it works, but it doesn't matter. The same way that when we were saying, if I say if BLNA, that's the default of the C# language and many other languages. If I say if BLNA, the interpreter understands that I'm asking if BLNA is true. Okay? So that's the point. If I say if BLNA and BLNB, it means that I'm saying, okay, BLNA is true and BLNB is true. So if they are both true, then it works. Okay, so that's the whole situation. And then we have console.write line, BLNA and BLNB are true here. So is that clear? Yeah. So one question: what if I say here, if BLNA and BLNB equals false? What do I get? Which code would I see? Would I see the BLNN and BLNB? Would I see? Let's write something here that is like easier, and it's not stating something. It says like hello, and then here we say, instead of that we say ciao. Okay. So it will say ciao. What's your opinion, Anil? You're right. Why? Because exactly. Because we are not asking, we are not saying if BLNA is false. We are not asking if BLNA is false to something. The point is what we are asking is that we say if this condition is true and this condition is true. Okay? So the AND operator reads this whole condition. So it says if BLNA and BLNB equals false, then so this condition is true because BLNB is false, and this condition is true because BLNA is true. So when I run it, it says hello. Okay? So that's the point. It's like, although it's AND, but you can always revert it and redirect it to something that says true or wrong, false. Okay? Did you get it, Kasra? Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. Because again, this is about operators order. So it's like in this line of code, the first order that it takes is that it wants to check the result of BLNB equals false, and it says, okay, the result of this statement is true, or in another case maybe false. Okay, so first it finds the result of each side, then it starts to compare those results. Okay. Yes. Yes, yes. So you're saying if we say if in and not BLNB, exactly, it's the same. Yeah, yeah. I didn't write this because I wanted to make sure that you first understand the concept. I didn't want to start everything abbreviated. Yeah, it's exactly the same. Okay. So what I suggest is that you actually open. I already sent you the list of the link of this um, compiler. So I suggest you open the compiler, the online compiler, and start testing these things while I can also wait in the middle. So you can see how things work and if you have questions. So I can answer your questions. So now the point is we said we have and we have double AND, which is a conditional logical operator. So at this situation, if I say AND BLNB, I would get CHA because one of them is false. The question is like, what happens if I say and I run? I would still get CHA. So what is the difference? In these operators, when you have two of them, so when it becomes basically a conditional logical operator, something changes and the way that the interpreter works changes, which is very important. If you use only one AND, okay, the interpreter checks the situation of both left side and right side of the syntax of the expression that you wrote. Okay, we call this whole line an expression. Okay, so this is an expression. So the interpreter reads both sides. So when I say reads, it basically runs, calculates, understands, gets the values. So it consumes memory, it consumes RAM, it takes CPU, everything, and calculates and then sends the values, both of them, to the interpreter. And then it says, okay, BLNA is true, BLNB is false. So you know one of them is true, one of them is false. What is the answer? it says, okay, the answer is false. So the answer is false. So this if condition does not meet its condition, so it is not becoming true. Then we go to else, and then we send chop. Okay, so the point is, if we are using and, what happens here is that the interpreter reads the first one, the left one first. And the interpreter knows that with double and, we always need to get both sides true. Okay? So if one side is false, the answer is already false. So if BLNA is false, the whole answer is false. We don't care what is the answer of BLNB. Okay, so if this is false and this is true, okay, then as soon as interpreter sees the answer of BLNA is false, it ignores the rest of the line, not the rest of the whole line, the rest of this expression, and it doesn't run it. So it automatically says BLNA is false. Okay, got it. The answer is false. Go to here, send this, and exit the whole thing and continue. I have things to do. I don't have time. So can you imagine what is the importance of such a thing, and why do we even need such a thing in programming? Exactly. Because like right now, BLNA, BLNB is nothing. It doesn't have any calculation. But this BLNA and this BLNB, they could be answers from methods. So BLNB itself could be a method that's running, and that has, like, I don't know, thousands of lines of code behind it that does something. And BLNB also. So as soon as the method A runs and the answer is false, so why should we waste so much resources and so much memory to check BLNB? And this is exactly the reason sometimes you see a code is written by someone with less experience, and someone with more experience sits behind the code and changes like a few things, maybe a few minutes, and you suddenly see the code which was running in, I don't know, 2 minutes, now it's being done in, I don't know, 500 milliseconds. And we don't know what happened, but simply it's about memory allocation. There are so many tricks like this that you can do things and do things quicker. But this doesn't mean that it's always better to use logical one. There are cases, and this is something that I'm not going to focus on now. Maybe we get to that later during the course. But if you happen to arrive to a situation that you need to choose between the two, think wisely. And if you don't know, start searching online. You can again start asking like ChatGPT or other large language models and get help. So, any questions? Is it clear? I guess yes. So this was the situation that we wanted both sides of the AND operator to meet a condition. Okay. So what if just one of them is enough for us? What does that mean? It means we want this or that. Then we can use a logical OR operator. Okay. And the OR operator is this pipeline. So if I go here and I have false and true, and if I say if BLNA pipeline BLNB, what is the answer? Exactly. So, and again, the same situation is with double pipe. So this one is a logical one. So if I have two pipelines, it means it's a comparison logical one, and it means that BLNA is false in this case. So it didn't meet the condition. So I have to check BLNB to make sure if they are both false, then I can send false. But on the other hand, if BLN A was true and BLN A was false, then what was happening, it would have seen like, okay, BLN A is true, then BLN B, I don't care. BLN A is true. I'm not going to check the rest because it's true. Done. I should say hello. Okay. So, is this also clear? Exactly. This is something that I'm going to show you when I'm, I hope I don't forget. I should remember to do that. Show the, cool. When I'm explaining the method, I'm gonna show this test to you because then we're gonna get methods and you see that this method is never being run because then we can test it with like console write line things inside console write line commands inside the method, and then we see what's the difference. Okay. So here's the situation, and then what is the next operator that we have? We have the exclusive OR operator. Do you know what is the exclusive OR operator does? I guess you both had some experience with Python, right? Or no, Kestra doesn't have. And Kestra, you have also? You don't. Okay. So the exclusive operator, it says it computes the logical exclusive OR, also known as the logical XOR of these operands. The results of X exclusive or Y is true if X evaluates to true and Y evaluates to false. What does that mean? If both of them are true or both of them are false, the answer is false. It only works if only one of them is true. Okay. You get it? It's very clear. Okay. So here, in this case, if we say exactly. So this is exclusive OR, and then we have compound assignments for them as well. So what does that mean? I'm just going through this very quickly because this can get confusing and we are not really needing it right now. But just for you to know, it's possible that we say, okay, so BLN B ampersand equals ampersand equals true. Can you imagine what does this mean? Think about the int plus equals 5. What did that mean? It meant int equals int something, int a equals a plus 5. So basically BLNB ampersand equals true means BLNB equals BLNB and true. So what happens? What would be BLNB afterwards? You say it would become true from false. What do you say, Anil? So the question is that we write BLNB equal ampersand equals true. So it means BLNB equals BLNB and true. So these two lines of code are the same. They mean the same thing. So what does happen? BLNB is false. So false and true. The answer to BLNB is still false, so it doesn't change. So the point is, there are most of the cases, there are sometimes that we are using this with exclusive or, because we want to change the nature of something. So we say BLNB exclusive equals true. So what is the answer after that? Can you guess? It's like BLNB equals BLNB exclusive or true. BLNB is false, but true is true. So the answer would be true. So if I basically here write console.writeLine, now if you write BLNB and you run it, you would say true. BLNB was false before, but now it's true. It doesn't mean that BLNB was equal true. So if BLNB was true, what would be the answer now? Because it's exclusive equals false. Because BLNB is true, and true exclusive or true would be false, because both sides are true. And with exclusive or, we don't want that. We just want one side to be true. Okay? And this is something really helpful, because there are so many times that you are in a situation that you want to change something if something is something else. So imagine that you want to change the direction of a normal of a surface if it meets a condition. Otherwise, you don't do that. So this could be an exclusive operation, because you just change it if the normal is, for example, inwards. You just change it if the normal is outwards. This is something that you can use these operators for, instead of like running several like boring if situations. You can use operators to make the whole situation easier and faster. Okay, this was like an abstract example. Probably it's a bit vague, but you know it when you get to that situation. You will remember it when you get to such situations. So I think we can have like a short break and continue like in it's 18:24. We continue at 18:30.